Greetings and welcome to Inside Politics, Sunday premier political show. We're taking a look at the latest political developments that have played out in the week. My name is Jesse Rogers. Join us for the next 2 hours as we hammer through various issues that stood out in the political field. Of course, it being a Sunday, I'd like you to acclimatize with today's edition of the Sunday Standard. This is what you can expect in today's edition. Back with a bang. That's the main story right there, where it's a return of opposition. Last week, Azimio leader Raila Odinga welcomed Eugene Wamalwa to the opposition, but the ODM chief who cut his political teeth outside government equally needed such a welcome after the March 2018 handshake took him to the sanctums of power. Now, he has brought together an array of big hitters to keep Ruto's government in check. All to do with having a robust opposition. And that's one of the stories you can find on today's edition of the Sunday Nation. Make sure you grab yourself a copy. But interestingly, our topic we'll be talking about today will be canvassing the criminal justice system following that exclusive interview on KTN News that definitely opened a can of worms. As you can see, Kinoti, a man in the crosshairs in the 4.5 years that George Kinoti spent as chief criminal investigator, he gained fame and infamy in equal measure. Now the vultures are circling and the ring is closing in. Interesting read right there. But equally, on today's edition of the Sunday Nation, the main story, Ruto's first major storm, just highlighting various challenges that are facing his administration. As you well know, Kenya Airways pilots definitely downed their tools and thousands have been stranded as the strike entered the second day, unleashing huge economic losses. But not just that, IMF spelling out strict conditions to keep credit lines open. Equally, drought with up to 4.5 million Kenyans facing starvation, and the inflation cost, where the cost of fuel, maize flour and other basic commodities has hit poor Kenyans the hardest. That's the main story on the front page of the Sunday Nation. But since I had hinted on a couple of issues we'll get to canvass, including the criminal justice system, we'll definitely look at the priority areas for Ruto's government, which has definitely taken shape. 51 principal secretaries were actually appointed by President William Ruto. And of course, the committees, the respective committees, will do the vetting process thereafter. But we'll definitely touch base on the priority areas, equally taking a look at the National Assembly and what's going on the floor of the House. But let's begin with the criminal justice system, where the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP Haji, is now hinting at possible prosecution of immediate former DCI boss George Kinoti over alleged complicity in various cases presented by the investigative agency. Now, speaking exclusively to KTN News, Haji said Kinoti could be prosecuted over allegations of coercing his juniors to falsely prosecute Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua in the 7.3 billion shilling corruption case. The DPP further turned the heat on the former DCI boss for presenting to his office cases without crucial evidence, forcing him to drop some of them to the chagrin of the public. Our senior political affairs reporter Jeff Kirui with the details of the latest twist of events pitting the two agencies.
Former Director of Criminal Investigations George Kinoti is a man under siege. The ghosts of his tenure are back to haunt him. The latest tirade coming from a man they worked with in the administration of justice, DPP Haji. Speaking exclusively to KTN News Sunday night, the DPP appeared to blame the former DCI boss over a myriad of mistakes his office made in terms of investigations. Citing the 7.3 billion shillings corruption case against Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, the Director of Public Prosecutions DPP Haji alleges undue interferences by Kinoti himself.
We were pushed.
By whom?
By the DCI himself, through the media, to the extent that individuals were trying to say that we did not want to make the decision to charge because we were compromised, or some of us were sympathetic to certain. However, when we looked at the evidence, we felt that there was sufficient evidence to charge, and we made that decision to charge. Only now with the affidavit to discover that some of that evidence itself were not, were documents that were forged.
This coming barely days after Kuri Obadia, a senior detective at the Serious Crimes Unit, in an affidavit said he was pushed by Kinoti to recommend charges against Rigathi Gachagua and his 9 co-accused.
The person who forced these innocent officers to do this, and if we have the evidence, then that person has to face the law. If somebody broke the law, they will have to face the law.
Yes, and we're saying even if it's him.
Even if it's him. Even if it's me. You have to face the law. There's no two ways about it. Because if we let this go, then it will become a norm in Kenya.
The DPP further says they are in the process of reviewing more cases already before court, among them those believed to have been politically instigated. Haji said in some of the cases presented by the DCI, the threshold to charge offenders were not met. Among them, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's corruption case.
If I have to go by that affidavit, I will withdraw, and I'm not afraid of saying that, and I will stand by my word. And I'm doing it honestly, because there's an affidavit from a very senior police officer saying this. I have to take it seriously, and it's unfortunate.
Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
All right, that particular exclusive interview definitely opened a can of worms, leaving more questions than answers. And we want to interrogate what exactly it means for the criminal justice system and its independence. I'm joined by 3 panelists, familiar faces on the show. Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate, thank you so much for your time. Hesbon Owila, communication strategist, it's great to have you with us. And equally, Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst. Asante Nisana for your time. So let's begin on that particular issue about an interview that perhaps opened up a Pandora's box, casting doubts on the independence of institutions charged with enforcing law and order. Nyaribo, what's your take on the interview where the DPP sort of pointed blame or shifted blame to the former DCI Kinoti?
Yes, I think he should not have gone to the interview, number 1. Number 2, I believe that he's trying to clean his own mess, the mess at the office of the Director of Public Prosecution. When you look at Article 157 of our Constitution, which establishes the office of the DPP, under that, there are several powers the DPP has. One of them is he can discontinue a case at any one time without seeking any help from anyone. And now we know the High Court judges have allowed us to interpret the Constitution from the text, the way it looks. Those complex interpretations we can leave to the judges and the Supreme Court and whatever. But any Kenyan can actually interpret the Constitution from the text the way it looks. So the DPP has powers to discontinue a case. But within Article 157, the court must agree with him. I mean, he has to give court the cogent reasons that, we brought this matter to the seats of justice, but we want to withdraw it for reason number 1, 2, and 3. Number 2 or 3 of my argument, the DPP initiates prosecutions without being persuaded by anybody. The president cannot force the DPP to take a matter to court. The DCI cannot force the DPP to take a matter to court. In fact, when you read, because I really don't want to read because my colleagues will be talking, and also people can read. I mean, the Kenyans read. The DPP satisfies himself that, first of all, there is a crime that has been committed. How does he satisfy himself? He authorizes, orders, directs the National Police Service to do an investigation. So Gachagua or all other cases, the deputy president and all other people being taken to court, it was at the express initiative of the DPP. There is no way you can run around and say, DCI brought me some papers, therefore prosecutions Investigations into matters are a matter within the DPP's office. And in fact, if a crime has been committed and nobody comes up, reporting, the DPP himself can direct the National Police Service to investigate. Therefore, that interview speaks quite a bit. I mean, I have spoken with colleagues and we are, figuring out we need to go to court and file a petition to stop all cases en masse after handshake. Because it seems that, and the president has alluded to the fact that the criminal justice system was weaponized.
Okay.
So why was it weaponized for the deputy president and a few colleagues who are now going to government, and not for somebody who was walking in the street and a police mistreated him and he said, you are walking disorderly, you are drunk and all. I mean, all matters that are in court since the handshake, in my humble view, should be withdrawn by the DPP.
So that interview sort of reinforces those accusations that the criminal justice system was used for political witch hunting.
Yeah.
But equally, Hesbon, as you come in, how sure are we that the DPP currently is not being influenced, is not under duress as he was back then, which he sort of claimed in that particular interview?
You see, I think that's the most unfortunate thing, that if it happened because there was a regime in power back then, and we are accusing the DPP of having been influenced, of the criminal justice system having been weaponized. Essentially, we're saying that someone was responsible for that.
Yeah.
And what that does then, it makes it difficult for us now to believe that if the same people who were influenced back then and they are still in office, to what extent are they now acting at the behest of Kenyans? And you see, it's very difficult, to comprehend why someone who holds, an office that has a security of tenure would make such pronouncements. And as Wakili has said, the power to prosecute and even to order the investigative agencies to get to the root, of an issue rests with the DPP.
They
if you decide
to court,
yes.
Yeah.
And I think at some point they had that problem with the DCI, and he made it clear that the buck rests with him, who is taken to court. So if there are forces that were influencing, these cases in court, and the DPP thought that it was wrong then, the question we may want to ask ourselves as Kenyans, then why was he still in office? And number two, because he has security of tenure, why would he allow other forces, to influence what he does? And I think it throws us to a very difficult situation. And from where I sit, it doesn't help when all these things play in the glare of the media. I was very critical of how corruption was being fought all over the place by the media. I mean, it was never a public interest logic. It was from the DCI, a lot of noise about things, and essentially there was a police or investigative agencies influence logic that led conversations around conversations around corruption and who was to be charged. That it was not the enterprise of the journalists, as the custodians of the public interest, that led us to understand what was going on. That all these things were led by the DCI, and it was sort of, Hollywood kind of drama to some extent. And it made the war against corruption, for all intent and purposes, look like it was weaponized. But I think the conversations that now the DPP is rousing in the public domain are not making it better, because we start asking ourselves that then you guys are holding these constitutional offices that have security of tenure, but you allow yourselves, to act on the whims of the political class, because it's very difficult to explain why all of a sudden the shades of prosecution is taking a fairly political angle, and it is departing from what was happening in the past. And the people who are in trouble right now are the people who were safe the other time, and now the people who are safe are the people who are in trouble in the past regime. It doesn't augur well for the public, and what the DPP may be advised to do is just keep off. And if the other regime interfered with so many things, and you think we need to start from a clean slate, I don't think he's the one to start us there.
Interesting, because you've mentioned he has security of 10. I think he's halfway through his 8-year...
He can't resign.
Yes, he can. So where does the buck stop, Dismas Mokua? From this whole debacle, is he vindicated in terms of blaming fully the DCI, or equally his part of the mess we're in right now?
In my view, is part and parcel of the problem. As the two panelists have indicated, he occupies an independent office. is supposed to move on his own motion. He's got security of tenure. He's got financial autonomy. He's got capacity and competence. He's expected, and on top of that, he's got both the intellectual equipment as well as the professional equipment to move on his own motion. So he's expected to immunize himself from all political influences so that when he takes a decision, Kenyans and indeed the entire world know that it's the DPP who has taken a decision, that he has been immunized. And in my view, contrary to what my colleagues have said, let's have journalists looking for such kind of office holders, many of them, to speak out in public so that we know what motivated their decision making. And Sophia Onuna noted that kind of an interview. We wouldn't be having this conversation. Sure. We wouldn't know that he had acted under duress. Yeah. Now, he says during the last administration, he acted under duress. He has not demonstrated to us that he has now immunized himself that under this administration, he will not act under duress. So it means that, in fact, he has no capacity and he has no competence to hold that office. That he doesn't have capacity to act on his own motion. That while he's having a cup of tea, if he gets a call and he's told that gentleman must be in trouble, he'll move on his own motion. And as Wakili Nyaribo has indicated, all the decisions he has taken over time, people now may begin to ask themselves, wait a minute, did he take these decisions on his own motion, or was there influence? And maybe he needs to break further to say that this duress, how did it come? How was this duress? Was there a gun on his neck, or was it a monetary duress, or was he told that despite the fact that you have security of tenure, but we can still pull you out? And in my view, from his admissions, it calls for a commission of inquiry to establish, to look at all his decisions. As Nyaribo said, maybe there was a fella in Mosocho who was having a beer and he was arrested. So we need to review all these decisions and find out, does he act in our national and public interest? Is there fidelity to the rule of law? And something else that he didn't indicate is that who was this who was providing duress? Who was breathing on his neck? Who was making take these decisions? Yeah. In my view, that is the next revelation.
Well, according, even as you come in, Mr. Haji, because I followed that interview, he said Kinoti pressured him through the media to charge the deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua. That's one point.
That he responded to media.
Exactly. And he equally mentioned, and break it down for us in terms of how the wheels of justice grind. Because we have an investigator and a prosecutor. When the prosecutor says he was hoodwinked by the DCI to believe that there was evidence to prove such and such a case, but later on, no evidence was brought forth. Do they work out of goodwill, out of trust? How does it work?
I look at Kinoti as staunch Catholic, just for me to try to understand the whole debacle, what's happening. And I look at Mr. DPP, of course, as a staunch Muslim. And there is the distinct doctrinal differences that have been brought into a public office, because DPP says Kinoti actually forged some document through some senior police officers who have sworn affidavits.
Yes.
Kinoti says there is a faceless consultant hired by DPP to write reports about the situation of terrorism in the country. To me, that goes beyond what we can even speak in public. I mean, whose cousin was this? Was it Kinoti's cousin, or it was the DPP's cousin? I don't know. Yeah. Who is this guy who is faceless? So, but going beyond that, Jesse, what I just wanted to say, you see, everything DPP has done around this is not actually working through an established criminal process. This is purely political. Why is it politics? You see, in politics, people exist to lie to each other. They tell them, you know, your mother is sick, so please run home, see your mother, when they actually take the loot. So in politics, people are existing to deceive each other. What the DPP is doing by, for example, withdrawing the matters in court, is actually lying to the people. Is actually lying to the suspects. A criminal case, you know, there are several ways you can withdraw a criminal case. You can withdraw it through that Section 87, very famous, that in case in the future we get other evidence, we will again recall you. So that is Section 87A. Then there are so many. There is 35, where it's minor offenses, 35 of the civil procedure, criminal procedure, sorry. Then there is 89, and there is 202, and 204, and 211. All these are routes through which you can withdraw matters. A criminal case, for it to completely die, you must seek acquittal. You must get acquittal from a court of law. Once it has stepped in court, it must be acquitted. If it is not acquitted, and tomorrow I am appointed DPP, whether it's after 100 years, I can actually go for the file, dust it well, and then look for Mr. Gachagua, the deputy president, then an ordinary good citizen, and charge him. So this is all lying to, for political expedience, making, State House feel comfortable and making the leaders now who are in office to be comfortable. If DPP means good, he would have allowed these people to proceed to defend themselves, at least up to the case to answer. Then the court finds that they actually do not have a case. Then the court acquits them. Okay. But to withdraw cases like that and to say, now I want to charge Kinoti. Of course, it's music to our ears as lawyers when you say you want to charge Kinoti, because there will be a whole lot of lawyers to defend him.
Or for you, I think, Lance.
And it is not easy, let me tell you. Okay. It is not easy to prove in public, in a court of law, for things which have failed in a boardroom, especially relating to security matters. It is very difficult.
Hesbon, as you add your voice, because he's mentioned something to do with the political angle of this, Raila Odinga came to the defense of besieged Kinoti, perhaps terming this as an onslaught and a witch hunt against the former DCI. What do you make of that?
It's exactly what it is, that in the public domain, whatever is happening in the media is actually perceived as, a new government going after the people in the previous government who were working against, the forces that were in the previous government, disenfranchised but formed the current government. That is what it is. Okay. To any normal Kenyan who is walking around, that is what they are seeing. But, if you step back a few years ago, when all these things were happening, and the DPP has made it public, that the pressure was coming from the media. And to a large extent, I agree with the DPP that Kinoti's strategy was just be a blockbuster in the media as a crime buster, and you are the one who is working in the interest of the people, busting guys who are involved in corruption, and the rest will follow. Okay. At the moment it is splashed in the media, then the DPP would be under pressure to do that. And I think it is wrong to use the same media. If there was anything that was done that is not within the law, that is not the way you do with the security system of a country. Yeah. It can be done in a different way. There is a problem with having all these things in the public domain, and at the end of the day, we see no one is charged. And I agree with Wakili. You see, the moment all these cases are withdrawn, ultimately what you are propagating in the public domain is all you have to do is be politically correct, but you can get away with corruption. If we had seen a full-fledged court process that acquits these people, would say that yes, Kinoti must have done something that was not right. But you see, if it is withdrawal, it is in the media, and you're not seeing the full force of the full will of justice roll, we'll be thinking this is all political expediency. And it is what Kenyans are seeing. It doesn't matter whether Raila says it or not, but I think if you walk along the streets, that is what people are seeing, that now they are going after Kinoti.
Well, if it works like a duck, it surely must be. Anyway, final take, Dismas, and tell us, where does the buck stop? Because perhaps this goes higher up in the chain of command. That might be the unfortunate truth. Should we unravel the decision makers perhaps behind certain decisions that are quite heavy and weigh heavily on the criminal justice system?
The articles quoted around the DPP's office indicates that it doesn't respond to external pressure, it doesn't respond to internal pressure, that it takes a decision on its own motion. So if he responded to internal pressure or external pressure, the buck stops from him. And I think what that interview has confirmed is that any time he takes a decision, people will be looking at it using a toothpick, using a very powerful lens to ask, is he acting on his own motion, or is he acting responding to other pressure? And when he says that he responded to the media, what kind of public servant in the criminal justice system responds to the media? That you wake up early in the morning, you see a headline in the Standard, then you go to your office and you respond to media? What kind of leadership are we talking about? Is he not supposed to behave like judges or magistrates when they are coming with their determinations, judgments, when they're giving orders? They are guided by the rule of law and order. They look at the evidence. So it means for him, even right now, if somebody has got an agenda and is able to come to the media, he will respond in a particular manner. In my view, what he must do as a matter of urgency, because his continued stay in that office is exposing that office to reputational liabilities. People will no longer take his word to the bank. When he says he wants to do anything, people will look at it again. So in my view, he ought to resign immediately. And then number two, we must have a commission to investigate his major decisions to charge, to find out that whether or not there were external pressure. Because, you know, when you charge somebody, you destroy that person's reputation, you destroy his financial status, and you make life so complicated. So if he just saw a story in the Standard or the Nation that decided to charge, I mean, this is really amazing, and some of these things only happen in Kenya.
And I'm pretty sure the former DCI, Kinoti, equally has his side of the story.
Yeah, obviously there are two sides to the story.
Yeah,
I suspect if Kinoti also comes out to speak, it will be now a Pandora's box.
Quite so.
Just a second on that. You know, the public has their own story.
Okay.
Whether DCI was successful in his work or not.
Or not.
And
Okay.
as I said, there is quite a big difference between boardroom decisions and what the public feels. The public will be looking at how many aggressive attacks did we have before Kinoti, during Kinoti, and after Kinoti. And those are matters sometimes beyond. But in conclusions, we simply look at how many people were killed in the streets, and they're all there. In police stations, you will go and you will see murders, rapes, you know, like that.
Yeah.
There are all those crimes. They have statistics. So, in the public eye, when you want to charge someone and you want to go after him, be careful, because any government wants a good approval from its citizens, so that you don't just go running after somebody because he did probably 1 or 2 or 3 mistakes that you think are fatal. But for us, the way we look at it, they may not be fatal.
Okay, interesting. Let's take a short break right now, even as we continue with the deliberations right here on Inside Politics. Stay with us. As we come back from the short break, we'll be conversing about the government that is already taking shape. Just recently, President William Ruto nominated 51 principal secretaries. Of course, they are set to be vetted by the respective committees in Parliament. We'll be back with much more in terms of the priority areas and what exactly has been done so far, even by the cabinet secretaries who are already in office. Stay with us.